Low stakes poker gets harder when you try to solve every flop, turn, and river like it's a brand new hand. I have been a winning poker pro for 7 straight years, and one of the biggest reasons is because I do not make decisions by only staring at my two cards. In this video, I am going to show you a simple way to read the story of the hand so you can stop guessing and start making better decisions today. The first place players get lost is when they reach the flop and forget what already happened. They say, I have top pair, or I have a draw, or I missed, but maybe I can still win this pot. But before you decide what your hand is worth, you need to ask what the action has already told you. The first part of the framework is this: stop staring only at your two cards and start with the preflop story. Who raised preflop? Who called? Who three bet? Who just called and showed they probably do not have the best hands? Who has more of the big pairs, strong broadways, and premium hands? This is how you are able to conclude who can have the range advantage on certain boards and runouts. If a tight player opens from early position and you call on the button, that player is the preflop aggressor and will have the top premium hands. They can have pocket aces, kings, queens, ace king, ace queen, and a lot of hands that are already ahead of the random hands people will call with. That does not mean they always have it, but it does mean you should not treat both of these ranges like they are the same. Now compare that to a spot where a loose player limps, another player limps, and you raise on the button with a strong hand. That is a very different story. You are now the preflop aggressor and have initiated the action. You were the one who put pressure on the limpers. You are going to have more premium hands in this spot over the players who just called. If you want help making more decisions like this without overcomplicating the game, grab my free guide, The Low Stakes Poker Blueprint. It gives you the same kind of simple guidelines and reminders I use to make low stakes poker easier and avoid putting myself in bad spots. You can get it by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the pinned comment. The next part of the framework is just as important. Know who should have more strong hands or weak hands. Being the preflop aggressor does not mean you keep the range advantage on every board and in every situation. Let's say you raise preflop with ace king, the big blind calls, and the flop comes king 7 deuce rainbow. You are the preflop aggressor, and that board is still good for your range. You can still have pocket aces, kings, ace king, king queen, and strong top pair hands. The big blind can have some good hands too, but they also have a lot of weaker pairs and hands that cannot even continue to a continuation bet a lot of the time. Now change the board. You raise preflop with ace king, the big blind calls, and the flop comes 9-8-7 with two hearts. You are still the preflop aggressor, but this board connects with the big blind much more. They can have pairs plus draw type hands, two pairs, sets, straights, and a lot of hands that do not care you raised before the flop. This is where poker starts to feel hard for people. They remember they raised pre-flop, so they think they are supposed to keep betting. But the board changed who has the best made hands and draws. The hand is not just about who raised before the flop, it is about who still can have a strong range after the board runs out based on the betting action. If you bet and get called, that matters. If you bet and get raised, that matters even more. If a player check calls flop, check calls turn, and then leads river, that is a completely different story. Low stakes poker gets easier when you stop treating each street like it has no memory. The hand has a story, and your job is to follow each page of it as it unfolds. The next part is the one that saves a lot of money. The board texture changed, so you need to know who does it favor. This is where low stakes players panic. The turn comes and they immediately react to the card. An ace comes and they get scared. A flush card comes and they shut down. The board pairs and they do not know if that is good or bad. A straight card comes and now they feel like every hand got there. But the question is not, is this card scary? The question is, who did this card help? That is a big difference. Let's say you raise pre-flop with ace queen, one player calls from the big blind, and the flop comes queen 8-4 rainbow. They check, you bet, and they call. So far, you were the pre-flop aggressor, and this flop is still good for your range. Now the turn is the two of clubs. That card does not change very much. It does not complete an obvious straight. It does not complete a flush. It does not give the big blind a lot of new strong hands. There's no reason to suddenly panic on this card. Now change the turn, same hand, you raise with ace queen, the big blind calls, flop comes queen 8-4 with two hearts, you bet, and they call. Now the turn is the seven of hearts. That card changes a lot more. Some flush draws are now flushes, and straight draws may have completed as well. Even if your opponent did not have these hands, they could have picked up more equity. It is possible that some hands that continued now have a real reason to keep going. That does not mean you have to shut down every time. You should not ask yourself, do I still like my hand? Ask yourself, what changed with the board texture? Did the card complete a draw or pair the board? Did it bring an overcard that helps one player more than the other? Did it affect the range your opponent continues with, or is it about the same? This is how you learn to stop making emotional decisions. Because if the card changed nothing, you do not need to invent a reason to be scared. And if the card changed a lot, you do not need to pretend the turn didn't do anything just because you had a good hand on the flop. This framework is not about being afraid. It is about staying honest about the hand. Most low stakes players do the opposite. They either ignore the turn completely and keep firing because they were the pre-flop raiser, or they overreact to every card and stop betting hands that should still get value. Both mistakes come from the same problem. They are just reacting rather than trying to break down the situation correctly. So before you bet the turn, call a river bet, or fire another barrel, pause and ask, what changed? If you start doing that, the hand slows down and you are no longer guessing. You are using the action, the board, and the player type to make a better decision. If you want help turning these questions into simple guidelines you can use at the table, grab the Low Stakes Poker Blueprint by scanning this QR code. You will receive the 100 rules I used to win for 7 straight years. You can also receive it by clicking the pinned comment. The next part of the framework is where your profits can increase and your losses are minimized. Before you bet, call, or raise, ask 2 questions. What worse hands keep going? And what better hands keep going? Then, if you're bluffing, flip that second question around and ask what better hands can fold. This is the part a lot of players skip because they are too focused on their hand. They say, I have top pair, so I should bet. Or I missed, so I should bluff. Or he could be bluffing, so I call. This is not the thought process you should have. If you are betting for value, you need worse hands to continue. That means worse hands have to call, stay in the pot, or make a mistake against your bet. If you bet and almost every worse hand folds, while almost every better hand continues, that bet is not doing what you think it is doing. You are not value betting anymore. The same thing applies when we are considering bluffing. Here's the framework to focus on. Player type overrides generic theory at low stakes. A bluff needs better hands to fold. If you bet into a player who never folds top pair, never folds over pairs, and does not care what story you are telling, your bluff probably does not have a real chance to work. That does not mean never bluff at low stakes. It means your bluff needs a real target. What better hands are you trying to fold? Do they have those hands? Does the way you played the hand make sense? Is this player capable of folding? If you cannot answer those questions, the bluff is probably just frustration with chips behind it. Calling works the same way. Before you call, ask what worse hands take this line. A lot of players say, he can be bluffing. Of course he can be bluffing. Anyone can be bluffing, and that is not enough of a reason to justify a call. What bluffs make sense? What misdraws are available? What hands would this player turn into a bluff? And what value hands are you losing to? If the value hands are obvious and the bluffs are hard to find, that is not a spot where you need to prove how tough you are. That is a spot where folding may be the best decision. This is why the framework works. It takes the hand out of your feelings and puts it back into the action. Who was the preflop aggressor? Who had the range advantage? What changed on this street? What worse hands keep going? What better hands keep going? You do not need to answer these perfectly. Just need to ask them before making decisions at the table. Most bad low stakes decisions are not made because the player had no information. They are made because the player ignored the information that was already there. But this framework works even better when the hand starts clean. If you enter the pot with bad hands, no plan, or weak preflop decisions, every question after the flop gets harder. So if poker still feels hard, watch this next video. It will show you how to stop creating so many tough spots before the hand even gets to the flop.